Welcome, I'll be discussing the UFO episode, The Man Who Came Back. I've been rewatching this one a lot because I'm working on upgrading my Colonel Lake moonbase outfit, which is slightly more unique than the regular moonbase uniforms. Presumably because she's a colonel rather than a lieutenant, but that is just a guess on my part. The first few times I saw this episode, it didn't particularly stand out to me. And to be frank, Collins kind of came across as his namesake, Mr. Collins, in Pride and Prejudice. Obviously, I was pretty excited about seeing Darren Nesbitt show up. He is absolutely delightful as a villain. I mean, just look at him as number 2 in The Prisoner.
Now, this plan is too important for just little slapdash improvisations, you know. No matter how good the idea may seem at the moment.
We only have one scene of him as himself, before the aliens wipe and then reprogram him. I know it would have been pretty expensive to have him as a guest actor twice, but I would have liked one other episode getting to know Collins as Collins rather than creepy alien guy. So as a result, we mostly learn about him from Commander Straker as a longtime friend, and of course, Colonel Lake, when she's like, he's changed. I'm like, okay, so that's clearly not what he's normally like. From what I can tell, he was a very cheerful, intelligent, charismatic kind of person where you either love him or he rubs you the wrong way. And the alien version of that was a bit of a caricature. At least that's what I extrapolate. Like when he's on the airplane kind of humming to himself, do-do-do-do-do, I think that's what he used to really be like. The biggest reason I know he was a good guy, though, is that Commander Straker has this adorable little smile he does when he hears that Collins is on his way back to Earth.
534, that's Craig Collins, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Have him call me when he gets down, will you?
Yes, sir.
This subtle moment from Commander Straker honestly told me more about Collins as a person than all the backstory we ended up hearing about later. There's a saying, you know if you like someone when you come home and you see their car in the driveway, and your reaction is one of joy instead of, ugh. That's what we got here. Interestingly, I don't think Craig's accident had to do with UFOs. I think it was just bad luck that the fires started simultaneously. It didn't seem like he got shot or anything like that. It was just, oops. At the same time that the UFOs were arriving, and the aliens just took advantage of it. Like, I don't feel that the plot of this episode was a convoluted thing by the aliens. No, I think it was just a series of unfortunately helpful events for them that they were smart enough to link together and use. Taiki was not with SHADO this episode. I also really feel for Sid. I mean, listen to this.
I've been hit. No operation. What got through?
It's not quite as heartbreaking as when Zen on Blake 7 started shutting down, but it hit hard. Like every rewatch, I'm more and more connected with Sid, and this moment is not easy to get through. Is it wrong that I want to go through the screen and hug an inanimate satellite? We don't have Miss Eland this episode. Instead, we have Miss Moneypenny. I mean, Miss Holland. On loan from Section 9. She definitely seems to have an I'm working at SHADO today outfit, because check out this clip from Cat with 10 Lives.
Jim, what on earth's the matter?
I mean, I'm not complaining, it is a cute suit, but my headcanon is that there's an inside joke with her and Miss Eland. You're wearing that to SHADO again? I also have this headcanon where those two are just thick as thieves, and they go out together for brunch and mimosas and are talking about like M versus Straker. It would also explain why she seems so connected to all the SHADO personnel and really cares about them, even though she's kind of a fill-in secretary. She didn't want to declare Craig dead. She was keeping his file, like, maybe he's coming back. This, of course, is pure speculation on my part. Alright, on to the main conflict of the episode, which is Collins versus Gray.
Just tell me who's in charge.
No, overall, you are. But when it comes to Sid's engineering, Craig is God, okay?
Who knows what happened between those two? Or maybe the aliens got it right, and it wasn't actually anything in particular, it was just they didn't get along. They feel like two co-workers who have been working together a long time and just loathe each other. And then it didn't help that radio-controlled Collins kept needling Gray about being the one in charge. Would original Craig have done the same? My guess is yes, because nobody seemed to say anything about it. They're just like, Craig. I feel like it would be pretty easy to figure out if I was being controlled by aliens, though. How was Great British Bake Off yesterday? Oh, I don't know. I haven't had time to watch it yet. Who are you and where's Alexa? I think I'll run a paladin for this campaign. Post in the comments what would give it away for you. In this case, a sudden brilliance at chess was the indicator. I love everyone's background reaction to it, like, what just happened? Colonel Lake is like,
Checkmate.
for her, it was that strange kiss moment. After a few rewatches, I've come to the conclusion that this is a result of the aliens not understanding how human romantic encounters work. I get it. I've never had one. I've only observed it and seen movies. I would probably get it wrong too if I ever tried to kiss someone. So I think this is simply the aliens not knowing what they're doing and not being able to read the room on what type of kiss they should do. He went for super passionate and he should have gone for like apologetic. And when she started shoving him, the aliens probably remembered seeing clips of who knows what media from Earth where that happened and you kept kissing and they didn't understand. No. Consent. No one sat the aliens down and tried to explain consent. Watch Colin's reaction at the end. He is genuinely perplexed. Like, what did I do wrong?
You didn't leave the jungle. You brought it back with you.
Now, the aliens seem to have figured this all out by the time we reach Psycho Bombs, because the controlled human there with Foster, she got it right. So I'm guessing based on this scene, the aliens went back to the drawing board and said, okay, we need to do more research. Unfortunately, of course, Colonel Lake did not report any of this. She's kind of a private person from what I can tell, doesn't like to air her dirty laundry everywhere. And as a result, she just kind of told everyone, well, I'm breaking up with him. It did not work out. And as a result, everybody's like, she just fell out of love, it's fine. It wasn't until Gray actually accosts her in a corridor and is like, look, I have suspicions. This is an important mission. I need you to tell me the truth about what's going on right now, even if it's embarrassing. And she tells him some of it, but she is still pretty,
It's your duty to tell me.
He's different.
I don't think she's comfortable sharing personal stuff with other people. And I can respect that. But I also think Gray was right. In this particular situation, she should have faced that discomfort and told him more. Gray then follows this path that is absolutely fascinating, which is trying to wrestle between, are these suspicions I have just paranoia caused by the fact I do not like Craig? Or are they real? And I need to figure out a way to act on them and protect my people, especially Commander Straker. And he spends the entire rest of the time like, is this just in my head? Am I projecting? Or is this a real problem? And that's why he keeps reporting his findings, and then when people brush him off, he's like, wait, maybe I shouldn't have reported that. And then by the end, where he actually has a pretty decent amount of evidence, he has stopped bringing it to people's attention because he's like, every time I talk to them, they're just like, well, Gray, you just don't like him.
Just now, you implied that my friendship for Craig could warp my judgment. Just make sure that your personal feelings don't bend yours.
His struggle is just so relatable. When you go to your superior with concerns, and every time they're just like, oh, no, it's just your emotions. After a while, you stop pointing things out. You're just like, well, I'm not going to get any support from that, so I'm going to just deal with this myself. And it's what happened. Straker is being overly loyal to his friend and not trusting Gray's instincts. But at this point, Gray is basically just going on a hunch. Neither character is right or wrong. At least in my opinion. Even in the middle of the assassination attempt, Gray doesn't know for sure who it was. We as the audience know, but he doesn't. By the way, fabulous job from Gary Raymond, the actor, when he's running out of air and he's like crawling to the door. I know what's gonna happen. I know he's gonna be okay. And yet every time the actor gets me like, maybe he'll die this time. All right, taking a brief break from the story, let's talk about moon-based architecture. We know that they're in one of the two guest spheres and not in the main dormitory. The question is, which sphere? All right, from Central Park, we have Module 4, which is kind of toward the main platform. But we also have Module 2, which is closer to reception. Other than the interesting note that this features the same poster that appears in Straker's office, there isn't much to go by. I do like the plants everywhere. I think that's a nice touch. It reminds me a little bit of the solarium in Space 1999. Oh, random note, the weightlifting and gym area that we see featured multiple times in this episode is directly underneath Central Park, but I'm not sure how you access it. So let me know if you have run across something that explains how the corridors work. So if you leave the gym, how do you get back up? Because it's not any of the doors in Central Park, at least that I could tell. How do you get down there? I mean, you're not going to put a spacesuit on and go outside just to go to the gym, right? I'll be talking about Dr. Jackson more when we get to his character study, but suffice it to say, this is a perfect example of his outside-the-box experiments, or rather, in this case, inside the box, and I just love his wild theories. I know some people don't like him, and honestly, when I first watched the show, I was like, he creeps me out. And now he is one of my favorite characters. I love your eccentricity and just like creative thinking is the only way I can put it. I mean, just look at Psycho Bombs. Stryker's like, I don't understand how any of this could happen. And Jackson's like, what if? And he goes on this long thing about like electricity building up in the brain and like all this stuff, and he's so excited about it. And he's like, but this is probably totally out there, and you're probably like, what are you thinking? And of course, he's right every time. Maybe not every time, but you know what I mean. I mean, Foster would never have come up with, what would happen if we stuck someone in a closet with no radio waves? He'd be like, no, I have a date because I have a life. And meanwhile, Jackson is on base just like, what if I put glitter in salt water and then played Mozart at it? I need to save this for my I Love Dr. Jackson video, but he's great in this episode. If I was in a sub smash and I was trapped with one other person from the UFO show, I would choose Dr. Jackson. I would. You can laugh at me all you want. For one thing, he'd probably come up with a way to get off the submarine. And even if not, he would be highly entertaining as we ran out of air. In this episode, Colonel Gray is like, okay, Dr. Jackson, that's a very interesting theory, and it does kind of line up with my gut instincts. But I think we can both agree that neither of us really have any concrete evidence at this point. So you keep doing your experiment, running your computer checks. I'm going to follow up with stuff on my end, and then we'll circle back on it. And Jackson's like, yeah, that's probably a good plan. At this point, I feel like Gray is completely overthinking everything, which I get because I overthink stuff. And unfortunately, the aliens don't.
Now, I mean, if that is really the case, oh, Master, then you're wasting your time, aren't you? I mean, you can't reason with a robot.
Gray was just not sure if his hunch was right. And I think he went to confront Collins hoping he was wrong. I believe the reason he didn't go to Straker is that he kept being ignored earlier, and then he figured if Straker was there during the confrontation, he would take his friend's side, and it would have gone very differently. But here, he was there on his own terms. He could speak directly without Straker next to him going, well, it's Craig. On to the doomed spacewalk here. There's a fabulous combination here of models, actors, and close-ups of cool equipment props. It really feels like you're drifting in space during this sequence. So well done. According to Sid's schematic, it looks like they drifted up and over the Utronic detection array over to the other side where there's some kind of a computer access panel. But can you imagine being out in space as someone who gets claustrophobic inside the helmet and your best friend betrays you and gets this like cold zombie like the acting here of like, please, they can't take your soul. I know you're in there somewhere. There must be a spark if you left. Please. Yeah, it gets me every time. It is such an intense moment that even Foster just forgets all decorum and just starts shouting, Ed! Ed! Like, yeah, I'd be right there with you.
Come in. Are you receiving me? Are you receiving me?
That haunting shot of Craig spiraling and slowly drifting out into space, his air gone, is incredible. And I feel like this is one of the strongest endings of any UFO episode. You're just left like, although this story is uncomfortably realistic to watch at times, it has become a standout. It has fantastic guest actors, including a cameo from Ronald Culver, a mesmerizing story, great model work, and of course, one of my favorite costumes of Colonel Lake. I mean, I wouldn't be cosplaying her if I didn't like it. I chose this one over the purple blouse. That is how much I like it. The Man Who Came Back is one of those stories where at first you're like, what did I just watch? And after more than 10 times, you're like, oh, what I just watched? Yes. Interceptors. Immediate launch.